Welcome to Love You Bro podcast. I am your host, Jude DeVella, and as you can see, my little brother, Tom UK, none of my guys are with us tonight, but we are here at our wonderful sponsors place at Lula's Southern Cookhouse. We have an awesome location to shoot here, guys. Can't wait to get some more people on our set coming up this fall. But you guys, this is it sucks not having Jamie here because this is our favorite time of year. Home opener on Thursday. We can't be more excited, man. NFL season kicks off, and as most wives across the country and most wives in Kansas City hate this time because they're going to lose their guys till February. There's going to be no more of these honey-do lists and stuff to do. But tonight we have a very, very special guest we're going to bring on, a guy I've known for a long time, Coach David Culley, who's the head coach with the Texans, but spent 18 years coaching with Coach Andy Reid and spent a couple years with John Harbaugh and knows the Harbaugh family well. I know he's family with Coach Reid and his family and the whole coaching tree and stuff that's here. So Coach David Culley is going to come on tonight. We're going to bring him on as our guest. Let's talk a little bit about what's going on kind of in Kansas City right now, guys. You know, we were so excited to get to September and have our Royals, involved in the race and everything. I think when Jamie and I were talking the other night, Jamie and I talked about, I'm not sure if there's a play in Kansas City history that's had more of a negative impact on a team like for the rest of the year than the play that happened Friday in Houston. If you guys didn't see it, I'm sure you've seen videos or you guys have seen stuff on social media. Vinny Pasquantino was at first base, and Erceg tried to field a bunt bare hand. If he would have let it go, Bobby Witt could have double played up the middle, would have ended the eighth inning. Instead, he made the bare hand try to attempt, threw it. Vinny makes a stab at it, breaks his thumb, gone for the year, and they've lost 5 straight since then. So I just took a look earlier. They were down 2-1 to Cleveland and had lost yesterday. So I hope this doesn't send them reeling into a tailwind because they were right there in the thick of things. Aaron Judge, since All-Star break, was leading the league, home runs and RBIs. 2, 3, and 4 were Pasquantino, Salvi, and Bobby Witt Jr. So it sucks if we can't pick it up and figure it out here down the stretch because, they had a hell of an opportunity to win the division and to, potentially get in the playoffs. I'm not saying it's done, but I'm telling you, it's not going to be good with the way things are going now. So we'll see what happens with that. But right now, we're super excited about the home opener on Thursday. I saw earlier today they were showing a clip. I can't believe the first clip that comes out talked about how much they that Taylor Swift's in the credits and stuff and the and the promo for Thursday night's game. So that'll be fun. I know Taylor will be in the house. Travis is ready to go. 15's ready to go. I know we're going to miss Hollywood Brown for a couple weeks, but super excited to bring on Coach David Culley. We're going to talk a lot about just his stories and the stories he's got with Lamar, the stories he's got with 15 when he met, 87, when 87 got drafted and came into the league. So we're super excited to bring him on. He's going to talk a little bit about his history of, where his coaching tree he's been with, being with Bill Cowher, being with Coach Reid, McDermott over in Buffalo, and then John Harbaugh in Baltimore. He's going to help us break down the game a little bit on Thursday. So with further ado, man, we're going to get ready to bring on Coach Culley and look forward to listening to him here tell us about some of his stories and break down that game for Thursday night for us. So can't wait to bring on Coach Culley.
Glad to be here. Looking forward to having a conversation with you.
Man, Coach, I said, I reached out to you and asked you to come on the podcast, and I can't thank you enough. You've always been so gracious with your time and stuff when I met you back in your days here in Kansas City. But there's a lot to talk about tonight, Coach, and I can't wait to dive into some of this with you. I wish you were here on set, but we're going to do this. I know you're down in Houston, and we're here in Kansas City, so let's start talking about some of this stuff.
Let's go.
Coach, so I did a little bit of research on you, Coach, because I was trying to see where you started your coaching. So in college, you started at Vanderbilt, correct, in your college coaching? Vanderbilt, UTEP, then Texas A&M?
Actually, my first job was Austin Peay State University for 1 year. Okay. And then I came back to Vanderbilt.
Okay. Then you came back to Vanderbilt. Okay. And then that was when you went on to UTEP and Texas A&M?
I've been all over the place. I'm talking about, I can tell you right now, I don't want to leave anybody out. Right. I went from Austin Peay State University to Vanderbilt University Middle Tennessee State University, Tennessee Chattanooga, Western Kentucky, Texas El Paso, Texas A&M, and then on to the NFL.
Right. But 45 years total and 27 years as an assistant, and then 1 year as the head coach of Houston Texans, correct?
Yes.
So, Coach, let's get into a little bit of the coaching tree. I was kind of very interested in looking at some of the coaches that you've coached alongside and you've coached with. I know in Tampa Bay you were with Sam Weiss, and then from there, I know you were with Bill Cowher in Pittsburgh.
Yes, Hall of Famer.
Yes, sir. And then from there it was Coach Reid for 14 in Philly, 4 in Kansas City, correct?
18 years. 18 years. I feel like I'm one of his kids.
I'm sure. 18 years with Coach Reid. And then you were with Sean McDermott for a couple years, and then over in Baltimore with John Harbaugh, correct?
Yes. Most of all those guys, after I left Pittsburgh, all had Andy Reid connections.
Right. Now Sam Weiss, he coached with Coach Reid early on, didn't he? Did they coach together in Green Bay?
Well, he was coaching. Sam was coaching with the 49ers when Andy was getting into coaching.
Okay.
And, Andy was real big into the West Coast offense. And then when Sam became head coach at the Cincinnati Bengals, then the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, he and Andy were really, really close and really talked a lot.
Okay. Coach, tell me a little bit about this West Coast offense and Coach Reid and kind of what he brought as you went over from Pittsburgh over there to Philadelphia. And then we'll get back because I want to hear a little bit more about your coaching days with Coach Cowher because I'm a big Bill Cowher fan, so I want to hear a little bit about that. but with Coach Reid and the West Coast offense and all that, how was that as far as, with Coach Reid and you see all the stuff he's doing now with this offensive mind? Where did all this start back in the day with the West Coast? Was that was the Bill Walsh stuff, correct?
All started with Bill Walsh when he was with the 49ers. Also, when he left the 49ers, then he went to Stanford. Right. And basically, it all started with Bill Walsh when he was an assistant coach with the Cincinnati Bengals when Paul Brown was the head coach.
Okay.
Sam Weiss was one of the quarterbacks on that team. Okay. And that's how Sam got the connection with Bill Walsh when he retired. Coach Walsh hired him to come to San Francisco. And what people don't know about Sam is Sam was Joe Montana's first coach in the NFL.
See, because anybody that thinks about Montana always thinks Bill Walsh, don't they?
Exactly right. So you're actually, Bill was the head coach,
right? But
Sam coached him. Sam actually coached him. The very first coach he had in the NFL was Sam Weiss.
Right. Coach, I've been doing what I do as far as with my primetime assistants and primetime transportation stuff. I've been doing it for about 22 years. But it's my biggest part that I have the most fun with this. And this, Coach, being around me, the time we've got to spend together, I really love the relationships I get to build with the players, their families, the parents, the coaches. These type of relationships and these type of connections, it's for me, it's been the most fun that I've had is being able to meet guys like you and you always making me feel so comfortable when I've been around. So thank you for always making me feel a part of it, Coach.
Well, June, let me tell you something about that. One thing about people like you, and I've only been around a few outside of the football world, is that guys in the NFL, players, coaches, are very, very, they don't just open up to anybody and everybody.
Correct.
And so basically, when you do open up or you do find that relationship with someone outside of the football realm that you can trust, that are good people, that when you do have a relationship with them, that they always have your back, win, lose, or draw. And Jude, you've been one of those people.
Coach, thank you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart.
And that's why you've had relationships. I can go all the way back to when Travis was a rookie. Yes. When Travis first came in, I know you took care of everything for him. And basically there was a trust there. And that never happens unless those guys, whether they're players or coaches, have a complete trust in the people that they're dealing with.
Well, like I said, Coach, I can't thank you enough. That means a lot coming from somebody that's got so many years of experience in this league. Coach, I got to go and tell a story that I want to tell our listeners too. I was just talking to my fiance, which you and I will get into that too, because I'm getting ready to get married, Coach, and I can't wait for you.
Good for you.
I can't wait for you to meet her, Coach. She's dynamite. She's awesome. But remember when you were with the Bills and Carly, you would come to the games with me. You had got us some field passes, and we were down there on the field. And she brought her boyfriend, JD, and they were on the sideline.
I remember.
Coach, you brought Tyrod Taylor over, and Tyrod came over. You told Tyrod, hey, this is one of my guys, and this is his daughter. And we started talking. You said, hey, let this guy know how we take care of our own. And he told JD, he said, yeah, you don't want me coming in the hallways looking for you, JD. You better be good to this girl.
I remember. I remember.
Coach, to this day, they're still together, and he still brings that up to me because he goes, man, I couldn't believe Tyrod actually came over. And I said, that was Coach Culley's guy. That was his guy. He came over to kind of let you know the deal. It was.
Well, your daughter was like family to us. I remember when she was in high school, when she was trying to decide where she wanted to go to school,
yes, sir,
what she wanted to do. And I can remember us having those conversations. And obviously, you were very, very concerned and very all in with where she was headed. And obviously, she's done a heck of a job. I think you said she went to Creighton. Is that not correct?
Yes, sir, Coach. She graduated from the University of Creighton in May and just started her job at Children's Mercy Hospital in the cardiac ICU unit.
Yes. I tell you what, and I'm just as proud for her as you are.
Thank you, Coach. Thank you. I told her that you were going to be on tonight. She said she can't wait to watch the episode. So thank you, Coach. She said to tell you hello. She loves you, and like I said, thanks for always being there, Coach.
The feeling is mutual.
So, Coach, okay, let's go back. I want to go back to your days with the Steelers. Tell me, were you a receivers coach with Coach Cowher? Is that what you were doing with Pittsburgh?
Yes, for 3 years.
For 3 years there. Tell me what that was like, Coach, with Coach Cowher. He's one of my favorites.
Well, I tell you what, there's a thing about when you work for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and Bill had been working there now, I guess, for about maybe 4 or 5 years, been the head coach when I came in. And there's some franchises in the NFL that the league office looks at and they say, these are models of what the league office would like every NFL franchise to be like. Okay. And the Pittsburgh Steelers is one of those. All right. And I was very fortunate to be there. And one of the reasons it's that way is that franchise goes all the way back with the Rooney family, who's always owned it, that will always own it. It's not just their business, it's their life.
Right. And
when I went there, the one thing that struck me most of all right before I started working with Bill was that every time you walked into Three Rivers Stadium, the first thing you saw when you walked in and the last thing you saw when you walked out was 4 Super Bowl trophies. Right. So there was an expectation and there was a culture. And they like to say there's the Steeler way of doing things. Right. And Bill, being from that area, I think Bill was from Crafton, PA, somewhere up in that area there. Played at North Carolina State, played in the league a little bit with his mentor, Marty Schottenheimer, who was obviously with Kansas City,
yes, sir,
which is where Bill got his start in the NFL as a special teams coach with Marty in Kansas City.
Correct.
And I can tell you this, he loved Kansas City. Flat out loved Kansas City.
Kansas City loved Coach Cowher.
That's exactly right. And you know what? The thing about him, you always saw him, when you see him on TV, you saw that old gruff, that look he had. Yeah. Let me tell you something. It wasn't a front, but I tell you what, he was really so into the football and so into doing things the Steeler way, right, and so involved with what happened with that franchise and what was expected of that franchise, is that he had tunnel vision about what we were all about. Right. And I always respected that about him. And he was a Pittsburgh Steeler, although he never played for him. Of course, he was a Pittsburgh Steeler guy.
Right. It's always fun to watch him, even when he's on the set and he's talking right now about the Chiefs' success, and he talks about Arrowhead. There's a little sparkle in his eye that I think he's still got some of that love for Kansas City and where he started there with Marty, because I think he enjoys watching what these guys are doing there now and some of these championships they're putting together.
Well, I can tell you why he enjoys doing it is he has a lot of respect for Andy. He knows Andy does it the right way. And I can tell you there was a common thing that I saw. I was only with Bill for 3 years, but with Andy for 18. The common thread between the two that I saw was they're different. But the one thing that they were consistent.
Right.
Is every day you came to work, you knew what to expect.
Right.
And you knew what you was going to get. And I think that's one of the many reasons that they both, obviously Bill's already a Hall of Fame coach, Super Bowl winner. And, Andy's obviously been 3 times as a head coach, working on something that no one's ever done in the history yet. Right. And that's win 3. Right. And all I can say is this: if there's anybody more deserving of winning 3 as a head coach, it would be Andy Reid.
Yeah. Coach, tell me, I hear a lot of the players talk about Coach Reid, and a lot of guys, they talk about him being a player's coach. What is that like for an outsider? If you're not inside that NFL, you're not inside that world. What does that mean to an outsider, to an NFL fan, when they hear Andy's a player's coach?
Well, the thing about it, a lot of times when you hear people say somebody's a player's coach, sometimes it thinks like that all you do is it's all about players and all about what they want and how they do things. And almost sometimes being a player coach, you think that you're a little soft.
Right.
Well, here's the thing about Andy is that Andy knew the culture of winning. Andy also had been with Green Bay as an assistant coach with Mike Holmgren, who came from that Bill Walsh tree. And the one thing that they did there was they understood that the game of football and win, lose, or draw, the game has been and always will be about the players.
Right.
All right.
Right.
And that's the one thing that he understood as good as anybody I've ever been around. That being said, was one thing about NFL players is if you're coaching those guys and there's a little lack of trust that they have in you as far as trying to help them become better or not being upfront and honest with them, because sometimes you have to say things to them that they don't like.
Of course.
Sometimes you got to be a little bit hard about certain things that they think should be and they shouldn't be. But there's a reason why they put coach before our name.
Right.
And one of that reasons is to get those guys to do what you want done to be successful.
Yes.
And Andy had a wonderful knack of being able to get his message over, first to the coaches.
Right.
And second to the players, of what he wanted, what he expected, and what he expected players and coaches to do. And it wasn't just players and coaches.
Right.
It was the entire building,
right.
Jude.
Right.
I'm talking about everybody involved.
Right.
Understood this is the culture. This is what he wants and this is what he expects. And the one thing that I felt like he did that was really, really good was he allowed you to do and coach the way you needed to coach, as long as you got the job done.
Of course.
Because you've always heard Andy tell players all the time, be yourself. He don't want to take that away from you.
Right.
You can be yourself, but you have to be yourself within the culture of what we're trying to do and what we want done. And he has a wonderful knack of being able to do that. And, there's times when things don't go so well on the sideline or things don't go so well in the building or whatnot. The one thing about Andy was that whenever a decision was made, the decision was always made in the best interest of the team.
Right.
And that's what's been so consistent with him. And, those players basically would run through a wall for him.
Of course. I've heard Travis say on numerous occasions to some of the younger guys coming in that you're going to come in, you're going to work hard for Coach Reid, but Coach Reid wants you to be you. And what you're saying, be who you are. Don't change who you are. And I think he gives those guys a little bit of freedom to do that. Correct?
Exactly right. And that's the beauty. To me, I coached for 16 years in college before I came to the NFL. The difference, I had a guy ask me one time that was a good friend of mine that was still coaching in college, and he says, Coach, do you coach the guys in the NFL any different than you coached in college? I says, no, I don't coach any differently. I coach them all the same. I says, but the difference in the NFL as opposed to college is this. In college, for the most part, you got those guys for maybe 3 or 4 years. Now, things have changed. Now they don't have them. Now they may not have them for 1 year. And they could be at 3 different teams in 4 years playing for 3 different teams. It's really crazy. But the one thing was that, he always had that respect he always said, it's always about the team, you know, and as long as you was yourself within the framework of doing the right things, doing the things that you wanted to represent the franchise, then he was good with that, know. And listen, he's had some characters now, he's had some characters now. Matter of fact, that tight end's a character, you know as well as I do.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And not just because of Taylor Swift, he was a character way before that.
Coach, it's so funny because I have people all the time asking me, man, what's Travis like? And I said, listen, you guys, I've known him for 12 years and Travis is Travis. I said, what people don't understand is Travis has always lived his life. He's always been a hard worker. He's always grinded. But Travis has always lived his life the way he wants to. He loves football, but when he's in the off season, he loves doing a lot of his stuff with his friends. He was always looking for business opportunities. And what people didn't understand was he was doing all this stuff before Taylor. Now it's just magnified because he's with the biggest pop star in the world.
Well, anytime you mention the name Taylor Swift, I'm talking about there's people that didn't even know who didn't even know anything about Taylor Swift that all of a sudden now, partly in football wise because of Travis.
Yes.
And those two together.
Yes.
You got a pretty big deal right there now.
You talk about a super couple. That's a super couple, huh, Coach?
Well, that's not super. That's mega.
It is. It's definitely next level. Coach, let's talk a little bit about right now what the Chiefs have done here these last 5 years. They've been to 4 out of 5 Super Bowls. They've won 3. How do you when you see this from afar, how do you coach differently, or how do you know when to kind of put the gas pedal down and kind of let up? Because over these last 5 seasons, all of their postseason success, it's like an entire another season they played in those 5 years. And I think one of the biggest things that I've seen, and I'm just an outsider coach, but one of the biggest things I've seen is I really see when coach really pushes them to that limit, and then he gets there and kind of lets off and says, okay, day off. I've seen a few more days off here and there. Do you have to coach differently, Coach, or how do you adjust all that?
I don't think you're coaching it differently. I think you got to remember that the NFL season is not a sprint; it's a marathon.
Yes, sir.
And I always felt like that Andy's. If you can go back even before Andy won his first Super Bowl in Kansas City, Andy Reid's football teams, even when we were in Philly, Andy Reid's football teams, it didn't matter what the record was coming up to Thanksgiving. Sometimes we were maybe lost 1 or 2 games. Sometimes we may have been at 500. But one thing for sure was that where he understood about the NFL league and the NFL schedule is that at the end of the year, regardless of whether you were in the playoff hunt or you're not in the playoff hunt, Andy Reid's football teams always played better in the second half than the first half, simply because he understood, he knew what buttons to push there. We always talk about how if you look at all the playoff teams, the teams that win in the playoffs are the healthiest teams.
Yes, sir.
And the one thing that Andy always wanted to make sure was that you got to be healthy going into the end of the year to make a run for the playoffs. And then once you get in the playoffs, you got to be healthy. You got to be healthy with your guys.
Right.
And I think he does a tremendous job of making sure that happens.
Last year, Coach, with you saying that last year at the end of the year, they were coming down to that final week. Nothing was going to change in where they were seated at. They were where they were. They struggled a little bit offensively. So they knew they were going to have to go on the road. This is the first time in all their playoffs, the last 4 or 5 years, they were going to have to go on the road. So they knew that. But going into that 17th week, there was a lot of guys that could have hit some incentives for money-wise. They could have hit some records that they could have broke. And I watched guys like Travis just say, you know what? I want to be healthy for the playoffs. He took that week off. He could have had 3 or 4 catches and another 60, 70 yards, had another 1,000-yard season. But to see the maturity level in some of these guys and be like, it's not about these numbers. It's about stacking rings. And I kept hearing that last year. It's about stacking rings. And it's one of those things that made the hair on my arm stand up, Coach, when I hear those guys talk about that.
Well, here's the thing about, I've always said this, when players come into the league that don't understand, that don't have a clue about what the league is all about. Some of them come in from programs where they've won national championships. Some of them come in from programs where they've been conference champions. They've won ball games. But when you get into the National Football League, you start hearing people talk about all these numbers, all these yards this guy got, all these passing yards, the rushing yards, all that kind of thing. Let me tell you what I learned a long time ago. And I learned this from Dick Vermeil, who's a very good friend of Andy's. He used to come by all the time when we were in Philly during those 14 years there. One thing he said to us, he says, always remember in this league, it's not about numbers, it's about letters, W's and L's.
There you go.
And,
I love that.
And that's the bottom line in that league.
Right.
And I say this, if you're affecting one of those two in a negative way, you don't stay around very long.
Right.
Because in the end, that's all that matters.
Right. Right. Coach, let's talk a little bit about 87. He was one of my guys when he first got here in the league.
Oh yeah.
Some guys introduced me to him, and I don't work for him as much now, but still around and still get a chance to talk to him and stuff. What's some of the stuff you've seen? Because you were here in some of his younger years that you've seen different from him in the beginning in his rookie years and stuff, and when he came in to watching him now. I think I sent a text to you last year before the Chiefs-Ravens games, the AFC Championship game. We were talking a little bit because I was like, man, they're going to have to get 87 involved. And you were talking about, hey, big players make big plays in big games. And he had a heck of an AFC Championship. But what have you seen different, Coach, of his maturity level and what he brings on the field and to the team now as when you saw in his younger years?
Well, I think the one thing about Travis was, when we first drafted him and he came in, he didn't play early. He was hurt.
Right. He hurt that knee rookie year, didn't he? He had that knee injury. Yes.
Exactly right. But one thing I remember about him was his work ethic at that time was unbelievable. And then here's the thing you got to remember what people forget about him. He was a quarterback at one time in college.
Right. Right.
And obviously got moved. Great move for him.
Right.
For what happened. But the thing about Travis was I used to see him. He always came in early. He didn't know what the league was all about,
right.
But he was all ears in asking veterans.
Of course.
How do you do this? How do you do that? I can remember him. He used to come up to me all the time after practice, and they'd be throwing balls, and he'd be standing there catching the ball. And I'd go up to him and I says, Travis, how many times are you ever going to catch a football standing?
Right.
He says, probably not ever, Coach. I said, then when your ball's been thrown to you, move around, step to the ball, move around. Don't stand. You're never going to get balls like that unless you're in the end zone and you get one thrown to you and it's a touchdown.
Right.
But he always wanted to learn.
Right.
And you could tell, first of all, he was a tremendous athlete.
Of course.
And like you said, he was young and he didn't know at that time. But the thing he did was he wanted to know.
Right.
And he was a sponge to those guys that did know.
Right.
Right. And I will say this too, and I'll say this too about him, is once Alex was there, but I think watching Alex at that time with those 4 years I was there with him, Alex was the consummate pro, and Alex had the utmost respect from the football team. And Travis knew this guy was the ultimate pro. I mean, here was the number one player picked in the draft when he came out, had been in a Super Bowl, had some things happen to him that could have put him in the tank, but never did.
No.
And so I think having a guy like that there running the show at that time was a tremendous thing for Travis and all the other veteran players that we had there on defense. Right. Those guys they had, Eric Berry, Johnson. I mean, all those guys, man. Right. It was you had great veteran leadership there.
Right. Right. I watched Travis, like I said, from when he started, when he was younger. Like I said, Alex Smith was someone, Coach, that I heard so many great things about Alex. And when you go and you hear the story about when 15 got drafted and basically, them kind of telling Alex, like, this kid's coming in, you're going to groom him and he's probably going to be the guy. I mean, for him to go out and have the year he had and everything you hear from Patrick was just, like you said, the consummate pro was, Alex, and everything he showed and taught 15, because I know 15 goes and thanks him and gives him a lot of credit all the time.
Well, let me tell you this as a coach. 15 wouldn't be what he is today if Alex Smith hadn't been there. Having watched Alex Smith, who is the consummate pro, the consummate professional quarterback, on and off the field, was the best thing that could have happened to him in looking at seeing how it's done instead of getting thrown to the wolves. Now, that was a pretty good football team.
Right.
But he understood that. And Andy, being who he was, understood too that this guy right here is special.
Right.
But He needs to understand about this game. They don't know what they don't know when they first come in.
Right.
Jude.
Right.
And when you got people that do know what they know and that's been there and done that, that's an invaluable experience that you can have. And to me, Alex Smith was the one person, the one position that he played, which is the most important position on the field, is all of a sudden seeing how he did things. Number 15 took it in, just like I said Travis did. He took it in, learned from one of the very best at being a pro. And then obviously, he's 3 Super Bowls later.
Of course. I mean, like I said, 15 definitely learned from one of the greats, I think, because Alex Smith, everything I've heard about him has just been amazing. Things I've heard. When 15 got drafted, Coach, I remember I was out to dinner one night with Derek Johnson. And Derek's a very dear friend of mine. I was with him for 13 years while he was in the league as his assistant. So I get to see him often. And I'll never forget having dinner. I was on the plaza with Derek, and Derek said, man, he goes, I don't know if you get it. He goes, 15, he goes, this kid's just different. And I said, what do you mean he's different? He goes, you don't understand. He's the scout team quarterback, and the things he's doing, he's making our defense's head spin and go different ways, and he's the scout team quarterback right now. He said, this kid is different.
The thing that happened there was they were seeing a better quarterback on scout team than they saw in the opponents.
That's what it was, Coach. That's what it was. That's for sure what it was. And I remember Travis just saying, man, he said when he throws the ball, when you're coming out of a break and you turn, it's just on you. Like it's just there. He said he's got some zip to it.
Let me tell you a quick story about him when he was being drafted. I was in Buffalo at the time. And he was one of, I don't remember, there was 4 or 5 quarterbacks that came out that year.
Yes, sir.
And we had flown over Buffalo because we were going to take a quarterback. Obviously, we ended up taking Josh Allen, which pretty good pick. Yes. But we went to Texas Tech. Mr. Pagula, Miss Pagula, the 2 owners, the general manager, Sean, myself, and the coordinator, Steve Dennison.
Yes.
And we'd gone to all these places, Baker Mayfield. We went to the kid at Southern Cal, the kid at UCLA.
Right.
Oh, shoot. Where's the other one?
Trubisky from North Carolina was coming out.
Right, exactly right.
Yep.
We went to see all those guys. Listen, and Mr. Pagula was on every trip. The one trip that we went on, when we went to Texas Tech, first of all, you're out in West Texas.
Right.
The wind's blowing. It's in the spring. The wind's blowing. Tumbleweeds are going around. We're in the stadium, and he's got a receiver out there working out with him. And so we go do the stuff inside. We have dinner with him the night before. We go out with him the next day and work him out, put him on the board, do the whole thing.
Coach, hold on for one second. I'm sorry. We got to cut for a second. We got to take this little bit of a break. But I want you to tell this story, Coach, because this is a huge story. I want to hear the story.
All right.
3, 2. Here at Love You Bro Podcast, we'd like to give a special thanks and a special shout out to our sponsors. Without our sponsors, we're not able to do what we want to do, and that's be able to come on every week and talk about sports, drink a few beers, have some great guests on, some great co-hosts. So I want to give a shout out and a thanks to our sponsors. And our main sponsor that is sponsoring us this year is Proactive Solutions. So we'd like to thank Proactive Solutions. Proactive Solutions has been delivering infrastructure solutions and IT design and consultation services to clients ranging from startups, Fortune 500 companies for more than 27 years. They're proud to be a Kansas City locally owned and a top woman-owned business, offering custom solutions and personalized support. You can trust Proactive Solutions with all your technology needs. If your company needs IT solutions, reach out to Proactive Solutions at www.proactivesolutions.com. So shout out to Natalie and Dean Thede. Thank you guys for allowing us to be able to do this every week. We're super excited about that. I want to give a special shout out to Specialized Printing. My bonus son, Tommy O'Donnell, does awesome work over there. They do T-shirts, they do koozies, they do hats. And one of the big things is like some of our friends and family that we've been seeing around have been asking us about when's the merch dropping. So merch is coming, soon. Please follow us on our podcast. We're going to be dropping some trucker hats, all different colors for our college kids. I know we're going to come out with some K-State hats, some Mizzou hats, and some, of course, our Kansas Jayhawk hats. So we'll have some really cool Love You Brew We do love the brew, don't we? Love you, bro. Merchandise. So Tommy will be doing all that. Check out Specialized Printing and everything he does over there. Another shout out goes to Lula's Southern Cookhouse, Brittany and Bradley Gilmore. Thank you guys for allowing us to shoot in this super cool space. Everybody who's come on and shot an episode with us up here really loves the space. It's a great event space. Stay tuned because we are getting married here coming up soon. My lovely fiance over there and myself, and you never know if we might just throw some pop-up party here, maybe, babe, here in the event space, maybe. Okay, all right. We're not going to talk about that. So, Lula, thank you, Brittany and Bradley Gilmore. Thank you guys for allowing us to do this up here. Our two sponsors for tonight's episode and bringing on a special friend of ours, Tom Buchanan, the Wolf of Waldo. A special shout out goes to Bobby Baker's Lounge. Bobby Baker's Lounge was started in 1993 by Bobby Baker, good friend of ours. It was started off by Bobby Baker himself with a long history of family in the business. His father, John Baker, helped him find his path as a bar owner. In 2013, his daughter, Becky, purchased from him as he retired into the Golden Sunset. The 900 square foot dive bar has become a staple in Waldo since the day it opened. Says right here, Bobby Baker's is huge supporters of all firefighters and police officers. So Bobby Baker's wants to give a big shout out to all firefighters and police officers and say thank you. We appreciate everything you guys do day in and day out to keep us safe in the community. Becky, thank you so much for being a sponsor. Again, without our sponsors, we don't get to do what we want to do the most, and that's bring Love You Bro podcast to you. Our other great sponsor today is our good friend, Brian Shorgle, one of Tom Buchanan's best friends. Shout out to Brian. You've always been great and by our side, Jamie and I, to, support whenever we've asked, whenever we needed. So O'Neill's, it's a neighborhood restaurant and bar located at 9417 Mission Road. O'Neill's was incorporated in 1999. And has been serving up comfort food classics like Irish pot roast, in-house breaded fish and chips, homemade soups, and many other classics that make O'Neill's a local favorite. I know Shorgle's throwing some great parties over there. I know Tom frequents it. Jessica and I go there. Back in the day, I know we used to take my mom and dad over there for steak night over there. Starting in October, O'Neill's will be kicking off its 25-year anniversary celebration with special promotions and events that will last through March. They can be found on the internet at kconeils.com. So for more details, go there. And as Brian always says, go Chiefs, go Royals, go Tigers, go Hawks, go K-State Wildcats. So Brian Shorgle, O'Neill's, thank you so much for being a sponsor tonight. We really appreciate it. Becky, thank you so much for the sponsorship from Bobby Baker's. You guys get out to O'Neill's, get out to Bobby Baker's. Without places like this, you guys, we can't do what we do. So again, thank you for following us on Love You Bro podcast. And please tune in and follow us on all of our social media outlets. So thank you so much to our sponsors for helping us bring it to you every week. So, Coach, you were in the middle of telling a story that I definitely want our viewers and our listeners to hear about, because this is the stuff that they want to hear, Coach. When we bring guys on like you, they want to hear the stories about guys like from 87 and 15. But please tell me the story you were telling back when you guys were going to draft and you guys were down taking a look at 15 down there in Lubbock.
Yeah, we did. And I tell you, even before we went down there, Terry McGulla's son was all into like stats and statistics and those kind of things. And I'm talking about real stats and statistics, on all the quarterbacks that were going to be coming out the year Patrick and those guys came out. Right. And I just remember Terry McGulla one time coming in and telling us, he says, man, my son did all this research on this guy, on these all these players. And he says, man, my research says that the best quarterback in the draft is Patrick Mahomes at Texas Tech. And of course, nobody knew the whole story about Patrick at that time. Of course. So, well, what we do now is we go make the quarterback circuit with the private plane, going and visiting. I think there are 6 or 7 quarterbacks, Patrick, those guys, Baker Mayfield, right, all those guys. And we go down to Texas Tech the night. We get there the night before. We have dinner with him. Some cowpoke restaurant, obviously down in West Texas. Right. Nice little restaurant. Might have been the only one they had down there with a steak. Right. But we do that. Then the next morning we're going to get up and go work him out in the stadium. And the day we got up to go work him out in the stadium, the wind's blowing, tumbleweeds are going all over the place. We go into the stadium, and he's got a receiver out there that is working with him and running routes. And we're going through this, and the wind is blowing like crazy. I mean, this kid is throwing the ball through the wind like it's nothing. And I'm talking about he has one of the most unbelievable workout. And we were so worried because the conditions were not good to really evaluate and see him. Well, actually, those conditions actually told us more about him than if he was in great conditions. What it told us was that this kid right here, it doesn't matter what conditions are. Now, remember, we're in Buffalo, New York.
Right.
The snow is real up there now.
Right.
They don't measure snow up there in inches. They measure it in feet.
Of course.
So the weather is a factor.
It's a factor up there.
And so all of a sudden, this kid's making all these throws. And when it was all said and done, Mr. Magula was so enamored with this kid. And he was actually, I think, the last one we did.
Right.
And because we was working our way back towards Buffalo. And when it was all over, Mr. Magula now goes up to Patrick and says, "Can I take a picture with you?" Listen now, this is the owner of the Buffalo Bills. This kid is coming out. Patrick Mahomes was the only guy that Mr. Magula asked to take a picture with during all those trips.
Right.
And when the draft came, obviously he was somebody that was big on the radar. Right. And we had him he was way up there.
Right.
A lot of people had Baker Mayfield is going here, like some of these other guys going here because of this and that. And in the end, I think Kansas City, and I think Andy and them moved up to get him, I believe.
They did. They jumped up big time, Coach. Because if you remember, that was the year that Mitchell Trubisky came out and went to the Bears.
Right.
Deshaun Watson came out. The Pfizer kid out of Notre Dame came out. There was a lot of quarterbacks that came out. But the Chiefs did jump up to get him. We
went and worked out all of those kids.
Right.
And in the end, when it was all said and done, there was one quarterback that Mr. Magula says, "I love."
Right. And that was 15.
Only one that ever took a picture with. And that told me about what he felt. And then when it was all, and he was so humble. Patrick was so humble, with the whole process. But when we left that deal, I sat there and I said to Sean, I says, I think Mr. Magula likes this guy. I think if he's there, we might need to draft him.
Right.
So I was coaching the quarterbacks at the time. And then Kansas City moved up and got him.
Right.
And then from that point on, it was easy for us to pick who we picked because Josh Rosen was coming from UCLA. Right. Beautiful weather, all that stuff. Mitch Trubisky was coming from that. Deshaun. They were coming from places that never played in severe weather and tough conditions, right? I mean, Buffalo is no joke.
Right. Right.
And so we knew that obviously after going and work with Josh Allen at when he was at Wyoming, he fit the mold because he played in bad conditions. Of course. And I'll say this about the two, having worked out both of them. Josh Allen's arm is probably as strong or stronger than Patrick Mahomes. Right. But to me, the difference is Patrick Mahomes has that innate ability to just get completions from all angles, all different positions on the football field like nobody that we've ever seen before. Brett Favre was probably the closest one that I've seen in my time in the league that was anywhere close to what this kid is.
Coach, with what you just said about talking about arm angles and things like that, what would you tell a young kid right now, Coach, coming out of high school or in junior high, going into high school? Because you see a lot of these parents try to pigeonhole their kids. I don't want to say pigeonhole, but they'll try to make them say, you've got to play just one sport. You play one sport, you play it all year round. You see a lot of kids get burned out. What would you tell a father or kid coming up that's got an arm like that? Because to me, I think the stuff we've seen from his baseball experience and what he's done, that's where all the arm angles come from. Is that right, Coach?
No doubt about it. And let me tell you this about those parents. Of course, I'm in the state of Texas. Football is not a game here. It's a religion. Right. Okay. All right. I mean, it's like that's Friday Night Lights is real. Right. All right. But the one thing, the most of the great players that have come out of here were not one sport guys. Right. First of all, they played them all. And you develop something different from each one of those sports that will help you in the other sports. Right. All right. Right. And so I've always said this when people say, well, should I only let him do this? Let him play as many sports as he wants to play. Right. When football season is here, let him play football season. If he's good enough to play basketball, let him play basketball. If he can't play basketball, let him do something else that season. Baseball, track, whatever it is. First of all, it develops so many motor skills with those guys. Just like you said with Patrick, having played baseball. Obviously he had a little genes there too because of his dad.
Right.
But the point being is, I would say the best guys to me that come out are the guys that are the most athletic that are not one sport guys.
Right.
They're all sports. They're athletic, Right.
You look at 15 and 87, and it was one of the things I noticed when I started working with Travis. And like you said, when he got here, he didn't knew the guys on the team, but really didn't know a whole lot about Kansas City. And we would go, Coach, we'd go out to Topgolf. And, Travis is 6'4", 6'5", and he's picking up these little rinky golf clubs, and you see him just hit this thing, 250 down the middle of the fairway when he's hitting this thing at Topgolf. Then I go into a gym with him. The guy picks the ball off a rack, and he's just draining threes, not even warming up, getting loose, just draining threes. And I know that's the same thing with Patrick as far as he can golf. He played football, basketball, baseball.
Right.
Hell of a basketball player. But that's what I've seen from those two guys the most is those guys can play. I mean, they're athletes. They played multiple sports.
Exactly right. Exactly right. Now, the one thing I'll say, too, about all those sports when you play is the reason some guys don't play football, they love to play football. The difference in the guys that maybe could be a good football player that maybe decides to go basketball, who probably should go football. He thinks he's a basketball player, but he's not. He's 6'8". He's a center, and they got 6'8" guards now. 6'8", you can't even play inside in the NBA.
No.
So the point is, the reason they go other sports is the difference in football and all other sports is this: the difference is you have to have a toughness to play football.
Right.
There is a certain toughness that you have to have. And there is not one game in all of team sports that is more team-oriented than football.
Right.
Not one.
Right.
Coach,
if you remember a couple of years ago when the Chiefs won that Super Bowl against Philadelphia, Patrick got hurt against Jacksonville. They had rolled up on his ankle. And I know that ankle was – and when you talk about guys being tough, watching him play through that the way he did and just hearing about, what he was going through every day to get that thing ready to go. That's the toughness you're talking about right there, because 15 showed that toughness throughout the whole playoffs when he beat Philadelphia that year.
Well, I can tell you something else about toughness too. You're talking about Kansas City. This is going back to Andy. Listen, training camps with Coach Reid is no joke. Okay.
Right.
Now, there's rules and there's regulations to where we used to go 3 a days back in the day. All right.
Back in Philly.
And with Andy, either in Philly and in Kansas City, and then all of a sudden they changed the rules. But whatever you could do, whatever he could get out, he made sure that we went for about 3 days in training camp that were probably the toughest 3 days you'd ever go through. And he did it for a reason, to find out who was in and who wasn't in. And even as a coach, dude, I couldn't wait for those 3 days to be over,
right. Right.
Because I'm telling you, it was a grind. But he did it for a reason.
Right.
And they all came out because of that.
And like you said, Coach, you find out who's in, who's out right away.
Exactly right.
Coach, let's talk a little bit about last year and what Kansas City did, because what I want to eventually get to is I want you to kind of, and this is the fun part for me, is the fact that you coached with John Harbaugh in Baltimore. You've coached with Coach Reid for a long time. I know you're close to him. So eventually I want to get to breaking down the game a little bit coming up this Thursday. But let's talk a little bit about last year, Coach. There for a couple of years when the Chiefs were making the Super Bowl, everybody was like, wow, Patrick's never played a road playoff game. He's never had to go into a tough environment. Last year they struggled during the middle of the year. They were struggling with the receiving core, finding out who was going to be the guy. They didn't have the guy. So their offense struggled. But come playoff time, it was like, boom, they won a game against Miami. They knew to get to the Super Bowl, it was going to be, they had to go through Buffalo, and they had to go to Baltimore. What did you see, Coach, when you watched those games last year, when they went into Baltimore, or when they went into Buffalo first, and then I want to talk a little bit about Baltimore. What did you see when they went into Buffalo that made you kind of think these guys are ready to take this next step on the road?
First of all, they took it personal about not being able to having played on the road in the playoffs. Hey, it's not their fault they had to go. They won all the games. They got home field advantage.
Right.
So they were the best team
right.
at that point. So that's why they played at home. But when people started to, and they won,
right?
They won. So the point was they started taking it personal because of the struggles that they went through during the middle part of the year. People started questioning, and they're talking about the receiver corps, being inconsistent and those kind of things. Listen, they've had that before in the past, and it hasn't been an issue.
Right.
Because let me tell you this: the bottom line is with Andy Reid's football teams, especially offensively, is it is a team, and those guys understand that at some point during the course of a ball game, I've seen Travis drop all kinds of balls in the game,
right?
And then all of a sudden get frustrated, and then all of a sudden it's 3rd and 8, and they need a first down, and he makes a play, and maybe the only one he might have played at that point, and it gives them a first down, they kick a field goal and they win the game.
Right.
Or they got to have a touchdown. He makes the play. So the point is there's the expectations there. And here's the other thing. When you got that guy behind the center that you know that at any time, any place on the field, whatever happens, he can get the ball to wherever it needs to get. Just give him the time. You just do your job. And then when it comes, make the play, because that's what's expected of you.
Right.
And they believe that, Jude. They believe that. And and it showed in the Super Bowl. The receiver some receivers that had struggled. Obviously, they made some huge plays in that game.
Of course, Coach. Am I correct and believing kind of in what I'm seeing as far as I feel like when a guy makes a mistake, drops the ball, puts it on turf, whatever, I feel like Coach Reid goes right back to that guy. Is that one of his things? Is going back to that guy to get that confidence back again?
Well, he's not going to avoid you. That's for sure.
Right.
And he's going to make sure you don't have a lack of confidence, because he knows at some point during that game, you're going to be put in a position to have to make that play, and you got to be in the right frame of mind to make that play.
Right.
And he's always done. And if he doesn't do it, the quarterback's going to do it. Right. Or they're going to do something to make sure he gets that ball in his hand and says, okay, that's over. That's done with. Let's go. Because they're human.
Right.
It affects you.
Right.
But no, that's always that's one of the things that makes him the kind of coach that he is.
Was that one of the biggest things that you saw the last year when they went to Buffalo, was kind of seeing that team put that chip on their shoulder of, hey, people are saying we can't win on the road? Is that something you kind of noticed from their team as they went into Buffalo?
Without a doubt. You could tell with the mindset. You could tell with how they started, because I think before the game there might have been a couple of little things going on, there. They're trying to hold in your turf when you're in warm up,
right.
Those kind of things. Right. And I think in both games it was that way.
Yes.
So my point is they were letting you know we're here to play. It doesn't matter to Buffalo. And here's the other thing: we've been there and done that. I'm talking Kansas City.
Right.
You haven't been there and done that. We know what it takes.
Right.
We're gonna find out if you know what it takes.
Right.
And they did.
Coach, did you see last year? Buffalo about a month before had beaten Kansas City in Arrowhead. Did you see the play where Travis threw the ball back to Kadarius Toney? Did you see that play?
I did. And that's something, I mean, that's an innate ability that certain players have.
Right.
And when you do it as a coach, you says, oh no, and then you say, man, great job.
Right. I mean, when I saw him and I saw him catch and turn, and it was like the safety was behind him and he kind of caught Kadarius out of his, and made that throw. I'm looking at Jessica like, did he really? And then Kadarius was gone. He was offsides, unfortunately. But to me, that was the greatest play I saw in the NFL last year. That was
well. And you know what? That there's nothing planned about that.
No.
It just happened.
Right, Coach. Let's talk a little bit about Baltimore and what we saw in the AFC Championship last year, because I want to get into a little bit about the fact that you're with Andy so long, and then you're with John Harbaugh over there, and you've talked a lot about just the mentality of walking in those buildings and what that was like. What were you thinking last year? I mean, because for you had coached with Coach Harbaugh for a couple of years there in Baltimore. You had been with Andy for a long time. So I'm sure on that Sunday when you're watching the NFC and AFC championship games, you probably sit back with your popcorn. What were your thoughts going in, kind of leading up to that game with Kansas City and Baltimore in the AFC championship?
That this is going to be some kind of game because you had the league MVP on one team, which everybody knew it was going to be him, talking Lamar, and you had the best player in the game on the other side,
right,
who had already won 3 Super Bowls.
Right.
Or 2 Super Bowls,
right,
whatever it was.
Right.
So my point is, you knew it was going to be one of those games, and it actually came down to, in the end, one quarterback having to do something for his team to put him in position to score, to win the game, and the other quarterback having the same opportunity to do that, and it didn't happen. Now, as a coach, you can't ask for any more than that.
Of course.
The ball was in the best player's hands on the football field when the game was on the line.
Right.
One guy came through, the other guy wasn't able to come through for whatever reason.
Of course.
But you don't get redos in the championship game.
Right. Right. You know, we were talking off air a little bit ago, and we were talking a little bit about Lamar. Like I said, Coach, you know, as far as being born and raised here in Kansas City and being a diehard Chiefs fan, I love the league and I love watching great players. And it did bother me a little bit to see the look on Lamar's face, because you could see the frustration of, man, like 15 got me again. Like, he got me again in my building. Like, I mean, I felt for him a little bit, Coach. I felt bad for him a little bit, but I know he's a young guy. Like we talked earlier, he's probably a guy that's going to get a Super Bowl, don't you think, Coach?
There's no doubt he's going to get one. And matter of fact, sometimes you can lose and win, Jude.
Right.
And for the future.
Of course.
In other words, I think he learned from that.
Right.
And I think more motivated now. That football team is more motivated now than it's ever been. Now, that franchise knows about winning Super Bowls now.
Right.
They got two themselves.
Of course.
And they've been one of the best franchises in the NFL for a long time.
Right.
And they do things the right way, just like they do in Kansas City.
Right.
And this year, just like last year, we're going to start the NFL season with the two best players and probably the two best teams in the NFL. Right. No disrespect to the 49ers or some of those other. I mean, you're looking at the two best players and the two best franchises in the NFL.
Right, and I know that Harbaugh line, that bloodline is it's a bunch of winners, isn't it, Coach?
Yes, it is. Hey, listen, and that's all that matters. Remember what you said earlier. It ain't about numbers. It's about letters.
It's about letters, Coach. That's you told me that off air. You said it's about the letters, right, Coach? Not the numbers.
Not the numbers. Exactly.
Not
right.
the wins and losses. So, Coach, before I let you go, I want to talk to you a little bit about coming up. Our episode's going to drop on Thursday. I want to hear you talk a little bit about this matchup Thursday. You coached Lamar Jackson. Yeah, you spent some time over there with Lamar. What do you think about this game coming into Arrowhead this Thursday, kicking off the season? You excited to watch this game Thursday, Coach?
Very excited. And I tell you what, they're going to play the game just like any other game, except it's the first regular season game. Understanding that there's 17 more. I think that's how many there is, 17. You know?
Yes.
So, I mean, it's one. Right. It's on national TV. It's on Thursday night. It's the first game of the year.
Right.
The league couldn't have asked for a better matchup.
No.
The two best players, the two best teams, and I think what it will come down to is it's going to come down to just like it was in the game before when they played in the championship game in Baltimore. I think it could be that same kind of game that if whoever keeps it close in the end, if it's close, then whoever has the balls last is going to have a chance to win the game.
Do you feel like, Coach, to me, and like I said, I just watched it from afar, to me, I feel like Baltimore coming in this time, they got Derrick Henry, and when they got Lamar doing the RPOs, do you think Coach Harbaugh tries to slow the game up a little bit to keep 15 on that sideline over there and give the ball to Derrick Henry a little bit?
Well, if you want to beat the Kansas City Chiefs, you better keep him on the sideline. And that's always a big thing is ball control. The less possessions that they have, the less opportunity he has to get that football team in a position to win. Now, if you keep giving it back to him, he's proven it year after year after year that if he has the ball in his hands, it doesn't matter if he's on the -1 yard line or wherever it is. If there's enough time on the clock, and sometimes there ain't been enough time on the clock, and he still have done it.
Right.
You know? So, but ball control is very, very important. And of course, the one thing that I think Baltimore did this offseason, which they went out, and they got the running back, Derrick Henry. And what does that tell you that they're wanting to do?
They want to run the ball, slow that game down.
Exactly right. They've always been that way. Right. Now they got a Hall of Fame runner in the backfield.
Of course.
So he's not the same runner that he was early in his career. Right. But he's still Derrick Henry.
Right.
And he's with probably the best football team that he could be on at this point in his career, with the best quarterback that you could be on at this time in his career.
Of course.
to have a chance to win a Super Bowl. And it's the same thing with him.
Right.
You know, he put himself he came there for a reason, to win a Super Bowl.
Of course. And, you can kind of tell, just kind of looking at that, defensively, that's going to be awful tough when you're watching Lamar, whether he's going to do that whole RPO and whether he's giving it to Derek or he's taking off. It's kind of scary. But I'm looking forward to the game on Thursday, Coach. I can't wait to see it. Coach, you want to give me a prediction for Thursday?
Well, I can't do that. I've got 18 years with Andy. I had 7 years with John as an assistant in Philly, and I got 2 with him as an assistant coach for him. All I can say is that night, Thursday night, the best team's going to win that night.
Yeah, and you better get your popcorn and get in front of there and be ready to watch that game, huh, Coach?
Exactly right.
Well, Coach, like I said, we're excited for it. I'm excied to see what the guys do. This is as star-studded a team as I've seen in Kansas City. When I was up at St. Joe, you remember St. Joe, Coach? When I was up at St. Joe during training camp, I just felt like, you know how you walk down the walkway to walk down to practice, right?
Right.
And the kind of the first day of pads you see, and there's 15 walking down. To me, in my mind, Coach, and it makes me laugh right now, I kept thinking of him. He had that look on his face like the Joker, like in the old Batman movies. Like he was kind of just rubbing his hands together like, I got some more weapons. And I thought, man, he is just chomping at the bit to get out to flip that ball around these kids. That Xavier Worthy kid from Texas, I think is going to be special. And when we get Hollywood Brown back, man, that kid's got some speed, Coach.
Well, you know what? I had him for 2 years in Baltimore.
Okay.
We drafted him. He's a heck of a player. You keep him healthy. I told Andy when they first got him in free agency, you keep him healthy, you got you somebody that will help you win another Super Bowl.
It's gonna be fun to watch this year, Coach. And like I said, Coach, I can't thank you enough for coming on Love You Bro podcast, giving us a little bit of insight for the league and the coaches and all your wealth of experience. You know how much I love you and your family. Thank you for coming on tonight, Coach.
You're welcome. Anytime, Jude.
Coach, listen.
Tell the family hello and congratulations and good luck.
I will do it, Coach. So listen, I'm going to be in touch. Don't think I'm not going to reach back out to bring you on again later in the season.
Hey, listen, I got you on speed dial.
All right. Coach, I love you, Coach.
You too.
Okay.
Feed is mutual.
Talk to you later, Coach. Thank you. Bye-bye.